Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a dramatic, violent, and honestly, utterly transformative 28-year stretch of history. We're looking at the years between 1060 and 1088. It's just this tiny window of time, really, but it violently reshaped an entire nation and practically laid the groundwork for the modern world.
So, what happens when a king dies without an heir? I mean, it sounds like the setup for a high fantasy novel, right? But back in 1066, this was the terrifying reality for England. The death of King Edward the Confessor without a clear successor triggered a completely brutal societal rewrite. It took a deeply established kingdom and threw it into absolute, undeniable chaos.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We'll be hitting 1. The Anglo-Saxon world, 2. The succession crisis, 3. The Norman invasion, 4. Establishing iron control, 5. Resistance and rebellions, and finally, 6. The new Norman society. Let's jump right into section 1, the Anglo-Saxon world before the conquest. To truly understand this pre-invasion era, we really need to grasp how these people actually lived and governed themselves. Take the Were-Guild, for example. This was their foundational system of justice. It was literally a price tag placed on human life to settle disputes, to avoid those nasty generational blood feuds. And then you have the Danelaw. This is crucial because it shows us that England wasn't some perfectly unified cultural monolith. The North was still heavily influenced by older Viking settlements and operated under entirely different regional customs. So how did this whole society function on a day-to-day basis? Well, power in Anglo-Saxon England was incredibly top-down. The king held the ultimate authority, sure, but right beneath him were these unimaginably powerful earls. We're talking families like Earl Godwin's, who wielded so much wealth and military might, they could practically rival the king himself. Beneath the earls, the king relied on the fyrd. This was basically a working army of everyday freemen called up whenever war broke out. You tie all that together with local law enforcement and a massively influential church, and you've got a highly organized, very wealthy, and deeply structured society. Brings us to section 2, the succession crisis, a throne up for grabs.
Suddenly, the throne is empty. So who steps up? What we get is a terrifying clash of titans. On one side, representing the deeply entrenched English establishment, you have Harold Godwinson. He's the most powerful earl in the country, and he claims Edward promised him the crown right on his deathbed. But then, looking to exploit all this chaos from across the sea, is the fearsome Viking king Harald Hardrada, and he's claiming his own historical right to rule. It's a massive powder keg just waiting for a storm.
Moving on to section 3, the Norman invasion, the bloody clash of 1066. Looking at this timeline is absolutely staggering when you realize it literally all happened in a matter of weeks. In September, the Vikings invade the north and just crush local forces at Gate Fulford. Then Harold Godwinson force marches his entire army north and completely obliterates the Vikings at Stamford Bridge in late September. But he barely gets a second to breathe because by October, a third claimant, William of Normandy, has landed way down in the south. So Harold has to turn around and march his absolutely exhausted army all the way back down the country to face this ultimate Norman threat at the Battle of Hastings. Now, Hastings is where the entire course of history pivots, and it all comes down to a few specific split-second decisions. Harold's English army relied on their traditional, famously formidable shield wall on top of a hill, but William's Norman army brought some brutal innovation to the field, highly mobile cavalry and archers. So what was the pivotal decision? Well, the English broke their fiercely disciplined shield wall to chase some retreating Normans down the hill. That was a fatal mistake. It opened them right up to be slaughtered by William's cavalry. That single tactical breakdown directly led to the English surrender and ultimately William seizing. Right into section 4, establishing iron control, the Norman grip. Now, what's really interesting about the aftermath is that the Normans didn't just defeat the English army. They aggressively occupied the very landscape. They rapidly threw up these massive motte and bailey castles. And these weren't just simple forts. They were the physical, looming manifestations of Norman dominance, staring down over English towns to absolutely enforce that surrender. William also used these structures to carve out the Marcher earldoms, these heavily fortified buffer zones right on the borders, to protect his fragile new territory from outside. On to section 5, resistance and rebellions, the Anglo-Saxons fight back. It's important to remember that the resistance wasn't just a handful of disgruntled peasants with pitchforks. Native Anglo-Saxon royalty, like those powerful earls Edwin and Morcar, along with the royal claimant Edgar Atheling, led massive bloody uprisings. We even see legendary guerrilla fighters like Hereward the Wake holding out deep in the marshes.
And perhaps most shockingly of all, by 1075, even William's own Norman followers mounted the Earl's revolt against him. His grip on this new throne was constantly violently bleeding.
So how exactly did William respond to this endless defiance? With a terrifying and deeply calculated decision known as the Harrying of the North. To permanently crush the rebellious northern regions, William ordered an absolute scorched earth campaign. His armies burned villages to the ground, slaughtered the livestock, and destroyed the crops, plunging the entire region into a devastating man-made famine. It was a ruthless, very deliberate message: submit completely or be completely erased.
Finally, we reach Section 6, the New Norman Society, Rewriting England.
William went right to work establishing an entirely new hierarchy, the feudal system. He systematically stripped the native Anglo-Saxons of their landholdings. Under this new framework, the king owned literally all the land. He'd grant these vast estates to his most loyal Norman tenants-in-chief, who would then grant parcels of that land to knights. The how of this system is fascinating because it relies on a very strict trade. You get land, but only in exchange for absolute loyalty and military service. Step out of line, you faced forfeiture. You'd lose everything in an instant. It really was a brilliant, if oppressive, mechanism of control.
And the sheer physical weight of this new Norman architecture serves as the perfect metaphor for what they were doing culturally. Just as they were replacing traditional English wooden buildings with these oppressive, incredibly heavy stone strongholds, they were pressing down upon and effectively overwriting native English traditions. They weren't content to just be a ruling class. They were aggressively replacing the cultural foundation itself.
The systemic changes to everyday life were absolutely sweeping. The Normans completely rewrote inheritance laws, forever changing how wealth transferred between generations. They brought in an entirely new language too. French became the language of the elite, while English was shoved down to the commoners. They introduced completely new concepts of aristocratic leisure and military chivalry. They even reorganized the entire church, swapping out English bishops for Norman ones. When you look at it, the takeover was total. It was military, legal, cultural, and spiritual. A crucial turning point toward the end of William's reign is the creation of the Domesday Book. This massive survey is really the ultimate symbol of Norman government. William sent assessors across the entire country to document absolutely everything. We're talking every piece of land, every single cow, every plow. Why? Because he needed to know exactly what his conquered land was worth so he could tax it with absolute, undeniable precision. It represents a level of government control and sheer bureaucratic cataloging that was entirely unprecedented at the time. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder at the end of all this. Did this brutal 28-year period, the Norman Conquest, simply destroy the established Anglo-Saxon English identity? Or, through all the bloodshed, the stone castles, and the systemic societal rewriting, did it violently forge the resilient framework of a modern nation? Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining me for this